There we go. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to make the frame for our greenhouse. Let's first make sure that we've got all of our dowel rod pieces. You should have 19 dowel rod pieces in total. You should have 5 dowel rod pieces that are spray painted red. And they're just spray painted red right on the tips. You should have 8 that are spray painted blue. These are going to be for the short side of the greenhouse. You should have a couple that are spray painted green. These are going to be for the outside of the greenhouse, what we're going to attach our electronics to. And we're going to have 4 little tiny short ones, black ones, that's going to be the truss for our roof. Okay. So you should have 19 total pieces. If you're missing one, there are spare pieces in the service building that you can go grab 1 or 2 as needed. Now, you should have a lot of plastic 3D printed parts that are in your greenhouse, or in your greenhouse kit. So one of the pieces that you should have is you should have 4 of these little T-looking pieces. Those are going to be the foundations for our base. And so I'm just going to lay those out. Okay. And like most rectangular greenhouses, you've got a long side and you've got a short side. So my long side is going to be my red pieces. So I'm going to put my long side in first. And these pieces should slide right on in. You might have to give them a little force. If you have to give them too much force, there's sandpaper available. So grab a piece of sandpaper, and what you can do is you can just sand off the dowel rod and make it just a little thinner. Because the dowel rod diameter varies a little bit, and sometimes when the 3D printing parts, it depends on the nature of the ink and things like that, that it might be off a little bit, and they're designed to just fit. Right, you should have to put it in with a little pressure, but it shouldn't have to put a lot of pressure on to get them out. Now I'm going to make my other side, just like I did the first side, and then my blue is going to be my short side. So I'm just going to set this one up and slide my blue ones right on in, and then I'm going to slide these right on top. Okay. Alright. So it doesn't have to be super tight, so don't worry about it if it feels loose. That's good, because we're going to need some give to make sure that the greenhouse goes together correctly. Now I just need to go up, right? So I'm going to grab 4 blue pieces, and those are just going to kind of be my support pillar walls on each side. Okay, so that's easy enough. Now you're going to need to grab 4 more 3D printed parts, and these are the parts that look a little funky. Is that they have 4 connectors, and they have a kind of a spot in the middle. They're solid right in the center to make sure that things stay aligned, so you can't push them too far down. And they have a little clip on the outside. That clip is what our green rod is going to connect to, and so you have to make sure that that clip is always facing out toward the long side. Alright, so this is my long side of my greenhouse. I just put this on when my clip slides on. Okay. And now, if I do that for both sides that are furthest away from me, notice they're mirror images of each other. I need to make sure that they're mirror images on the other side as well. Okay. Okay. Alright. So, now I've got my one piece facing in on the long side. I've got my truss pieces facing inward. So now I've got a good chunk of my greenhouse put together. Now, what I can do is I can put together my short side, so I can put together my blues if I wanted to make sure that I don't forget to do those. Okay, and I'm going to leave my red ones here just for a second. So what I want to do next is I want to make my roof, and I want to have some give this way, because I'm going to need to put in a cross beam at the top to make sure that my roof stays stable. So this is where my little 4 black pieces come in, and they go in the little sides that are at an angle. Okay, and again, you might have to give them just a little bit of a push, but you shouldn't have to give them a big push. Now what you should find in your kit is you should find these 2 pieces. They kind of look like they're about 120 degrees because that's roughly what they're at. And they're flat on one side and they have a little spout on the other side. They're kind of like our base pieces, but they're at a steeper angle. And they are the pieces that are going to represent the connector pieces for my roof. So again, you might have to pull out the little blue piece a little bit. Again, that's why you don't want to get your greenhouse too tight, and you just kind of slide them back into each other. Okay, and do the same thing on the other side. And again, just make sure that the single piece is facing inward, because that's where your middle roof piece is going to go. That's going to hold your greenhouse together right at the top. And now I can put in all of my other red pieces if I wanted to. Okay, so again, you can line them all up. And I sometimes find it a little easiest to have this one loose a little bit, and then you can kind of slide them all in roughly at the same time. This is the trickiest part of putting the greenhouse together, just getting it lined up so that these final red pieces line up together. Once you get them lined up, then you can give the greenhouse a good push together all the way around and make sure that things are reasonably tight. Again, it doesn't have to be super tight, but right there I've got my little greenhouse. It is put together. Okay. And if you see anything that makes it look a little bit off, again, sometimes you might have things at a little bit of an angle, but this is looking pretty good. Okay. Yep, everything looks good here. Now, let's worry about making the outside part of our greenhouse. So I'm going to set this aside just for a second, because you're going to want to make sure that you have the right type of plastic sheets. Okay. You should have two smaller rectangle pieces. This is for the roof. You are going to have two regular 11 by 14 sheets, not cut. They're just normal little sheets of plastic. And if you still have the little plastic wrap on it, just take it off. It needs to be smooth and needs to be clear. Sometimes I took them off, sometimes I didn't. It kind of depended on how late it was in the evening when I was cutting them. And then you should have two pentagon pieces. These are going to be for the sides. Okay? It doesn't matter how you put this on. I put the roof on last is the only caveat. Okay? And so let's put in our sides first, shall we say. So if you look at your top pieces, you'll see that there's little slits on the sides of them. And what you can do is take the pieces and they should slide right into that side piece. Okay? Right? So you should see them sliding right in, and they should slide right on down. Okay? And then on the bottom, you'll see that our base pieces also have little slots. The hardest thing with this is getting it lined up. So there I've got one side of my greenhouse, happy. Now I do exactly the same thing to my other side. I kind of just slide it in. And again, you might have to flex it and bend it just a little bit to get it in. But don't worry, these sheets are not breakable. You can't break the sheets. So again, once you get it kind of slid in, you can just push it right on down. And it should have some friction to it, because this also helps hold the greenhouse together. Alright, because we don't want to be in a spot where we pick up our greenhouse and it falls apart, right? We want it to have some kind of stability to it. Okay, now let's do our sides. The sides are the same way. Okay, so again, I always find it a lot easier to do the side that is nearest me. Okay, once you get them in, and we can just slide it on down. Okay. And it should slide right into the base again. And again, sometimes the hardest thing is just getting it lined up. But once you get it lined up, things should just fall right into place, just like the previous sides. Okay. There we go. Everything's lined up. So there, I've got my side in on that side, and now I can do exactly the same thing on the other side. And sometimes it can be a little handy where you can just slide one side in at a slight angle. Just makes it sometimes a little bit easier. And then you can either bend it or push it or slide it in on the other side as you see fit. Sometimes it can be a little easier to go from the bottom up to the top. Kind of just depends on how the 3D print has got it sealed up. This one I have it where it's a little tight, but that's fine, because I want it to be tight. And again, this is why you need to take the little plastic off, just to make sure that it's not too tight. And now you can just slide it right on in. There we go. Got it. Alright, almost. You just gotta slide that little slide right in. And then once you get it in, you should not ever really need to take off your walls again. There we go. Okay. So again, it's designed to be tight. So you might have to do a little bit of fiddling to get the little plastic sheets in, but we don't want them to come loose. And there is a little greenhouse frame. And now the roof is the easiest part. And we designed it this way on purpose. The roof just simply sets right on top. Okay. And there we go. There is your greenhouse. And one of the things that you can pick up is you can pick up a tray. The tray currently has all my 3D printed parts on it. And the tray will happily hold our greenhouse. And then if we spill water or anything, and it will catch the water, and we can also pick it up. And this is why it's nice to have someplace that's flat. If you have someplace that's flat, you don't worry about water, you're good to go. But you can set your microgreens right into your greenhouse. And that's the frame.